Imagine standing in an airport control tower, watching a modern passenger jet disappear. Not in a storm, not after sending a desperate distress call, but simply vanish. No explosion, no emergency message, no confirmed crash site, just silence. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people, departed for what should have been an ordinary overnight journey. Less than an hour later, it disappeared from civilian radar.
Where is the plane? Why did it disappear?
What followed was unlike anything the aviation world had ever witnessed. The largest search operation in aviation history stretched across vast oceans, involving dozens of countries, cutting-edge satellites, deep-sea robots, military aircraft, and thousands of investigators. Millions of square kilometers were searched.
And there is an indication, possible indication, that the aircraft may return back.
Years passed. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent. And yet, the aircraft itself has never been fully recovered. How can one of the most technologically advanced commercial airliners ever built disappear so completely in the 21st century? Did investigators overlook something? What did military radar detect that civilian systems didn't? Why did tiny fragments begin appearing on distant shores years later, while the main wreckage remained hidden? And what unanswered clues continue to fuel one of the greatest mysteries in modern aviation? In this documentary, we'll take you far beyond the headlines. We'll reconstruct the final known movements of Flight 370, examine the evidence piece by piece, uncover details many people have never heard, and separate verified facts from the countless theories that have surrounded this extraordinary case. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone fascinated by aviation mysteries, subscribe to Aviation Mystery, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next in-depth investigation. Fasten your seatbelt, because this isn't just the story of a missing airplane. It's the story of a mystery the world is still trying to solve. Commercial aviation is built on one simple principle. An aircraft should never simply disappear. Every second of every flight is supported by layers of technology designed to keep pilots, controllers, and airlines connected. Aircraft broadcast their position. Radar stations monitor their movements. Satellites track signals across continents. Multiple communication systems exist to ensure that even if one fails, another continues operating. In theory, losing an entire passenger jet without knowing where it went should be almost impossible. Yet on one quiet night in March 2014, the impossible appeared to happen. At 12:41 a.m., Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing. On board were 239 people, parents returning home, students pursuing new opportunities, business professionals, tourists, and a highly experienced flight crew. For every person aboard, it was supposed to be just another overnight flight. The aircraft itself inspired confidence. It was a Boeing 777-200ER, one of the most trusted long-haul airliners ever built. By 2014, millions of passengers had safely flown aboard the type. Its reputation for reliability made it a favorite among airlines operating intercontinental routes. Nothing about the departure suggested history was about to be written. The weather was favorable. The aircraft had passed its required maintenance inspections. No security concerns had been publicly reported before departure. Inside the cockpit, the crew carried out routine procedures with the professionalism expected on an international flight. On the ground, air traffic controllers watched the aircraft climb steadily into the darkness, exactly as countless other flights had done before. Then something happened that aviation experts still struggle to explain. Within a remarkably short period, Flight 370 stopped following the path everyone expected. No emergency code was transmitted. No confirmed distress message was received. No verified report of smoke, fire, or onboard failure reached controllers. Instead, the aircraft began slipping away from the world's conventional tracking systems, leaving behind only fragments of data that investigators would spend years trying to piece together. What makes this case so extraordinary isn't simply that an aircraft disappeared. It's that one of the most advanced passenger jets ever built appeared to vanish, despite the existence of modern surveillance technology designed specifically to prevent such an event. That single fact transformed Flight 370 from an aviation accident into one of the greatest mysteries of the modern era. If you're fascinated by real aviation investigations and the unanswered questions that continue to challenge experts, subscribe to Aviation Mystery and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore remarkable cases using verified evidence, careful research, and cinematic storytelling. As investigators would soon discover, the disappearance of Flight 370 wasn't just difficult to explain. It would completely redefine how the world thinks about tracking aircraft across the globe. For air traffic controllers, international flights follow a carefully choreographed routine. As an aircraft progresses along its route, responsibility is smoothly transferred from one control sector to the next. These transitions occur thousands of times every day, with remarkable precision. They are so routine that controllers rarely expect anything out of the ordinary. Flight 370 was approaching one of those transfer points. At 1:19 a.m. local time, the cockpit acknowledged Malaysian air traffic control with what would become one of the most analyzed radio transmissions in aviation history. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Nothing in the transmission suggested urgency. The crew sounded calm. There was no request for assistance, no indication that an abnormal situation was unfolding. Moments later, the aircraft was expected to establish contact with controllers responsible for the next section of airspace. That call never came. Initially, controllers assumed it was a routine communication delay. Radio frequencies occasionally require repeated attempts, and brief interruptions are not unusual. Multiple calls were made, but there was only silence. As concern grew, another alarming discovery emerged. The aircraft's transponder, responsible for broadcasting its identity, altitude, and position to civilian radar, had stopped transmitting. Without that signal, the aircraft effectively disappeared from conventional tracking displays. But the mystery didn't end there. While civilian systems had lost sight of the aircraft, military radar data later revealed something investigators never expected to find. Instead of continuing toward Beijing, the aircraft appeared to execute a significant change in direction, crossing back over the Malaysian peninsula before heading toward the Andaman Sea. That unexpected maneuver transformed the investigation. Was the course change intentional? Was the crew responding to an emergency that prevented them from communicating? Or had something happened inside the cockpit that investigators had yet to understand? Every possibility had to be considered. Experts began examining radar recordings frame by frame, comparing timestamps, headings, speeds, and altitude estimates in an effort to reconstruct the aircraft's path. What seemed like a routine overnight journey had suddenly become one of the most complex puzzles ever faced by aviation investigators. Perhaps the most unsettling realization was this: no one knew where the aircraft was going. No one knew who was in control, and no one knew why it had abandoned its planned route. If you're enjoying this investigation, please share this video with fellow aviation enthusiasts, subscribe to Aviation Mystery, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us produce detailed documentaries that examine aviation's greatest mysteries through verified evidence and careful research. As the hours passed, the search for a missing passenger jet was about to expand into an operation unlike anything the aviation world had ever attempted. As the first daylight illuminated Southeast Asia, governments across the region were already mobilizing. At first, officials believed the aircraft had gone down somewhere along its intended route. Rescue helicopters, patrol aircraft, naval vessels, and Coast Guard teams spread across the South China Sea, searching for any sign of floating wreckage. Nothing was found. No seats, no luggage, no fuel slick, not even the smallest confirmed piece of debris. For an aircraft of this size, investigators expected at least some physical evidence to appear quickly. Instead, the ocean remained strangely silent. Then, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Military radar records suggested the aircraft had traveled far beyond the area where everyone had been searching. The realization was shocking. Thousands of personnel had been looking in the wrong place. The search zone was expanded by an astonishing distance, transforming what was already a massive operation into one of the most challenging recovery missions ever attempted. More nations joined the effort. Ships crossed enormous stretches of open water. Long-range surveillance aircraft flew countless hours over isolated seas. Specialized equipment capable of mapping the ocean floor descended into depths that had rarely been explored. Still, there were no aircraft. Then came one of the most remarkable discoveries of the entire investigation. Although the aircraft had stopped broadcasting its location through conventional systems, engineers learned that it had continued exchanging brief automated electronic signals with an Inmarsat communications satellite. These weren't voice calls. They weren't text messages. They were tiny digital acknowledgements, lasting only fractions of a second. To most people, they appeared insignificant. To investigators, they became the most valuable clues in the entire case. By studying the timing and characteristics of those electronic handshakes, analysts reached an extraordinary conclusion. The aircraft had continued flying for several hours after it vanished from civilian tracking systems. That single revelation changed everything. It meant the disappearance wasn't an instantaneous event. For hours, the Boeing 777 was somewhere in the sky. But where? Using advanced mathematical modeling, specialists calculated enormous arcs, representing the aircraft's possible location at the time of its final satellite communication. One route extended north. The other stretched thousands of kilometers into the remote southern Indian Ocean, a region so vast and unforgiving that even locating a single vessel can be extraordinarily difficult. As additional analysis eliminated the northern corridor, attention shifted almost entirely to the southern route. Investigators now believed they knew the general region where the aircraft had likely ended its journey. Yet finding it proved to be another challenge entirely. The search entered waters with powerful currents, unpredictable weather, and ocean depths exceeding 6,000 meters in some areas. Every mission raised expectations. Every mission ended with more unanswered questions. It was as if the ocean itself had swallowed one of the world's largest passenger aircraft without leaving behind a clear explanation. If you're captivated by documentaries that explore real aviation mysteries through evidence and careful investigation, don't forget to subscribe to Aviation Mystery. And if you're enjoying this story, share this video so more people can discover one of the greatest unsolved cases in modern aviation. Just when investigators believed they were closing in on the truth, the ocean began revealing something unexpected. Small fragments that had traveled thousands of kilometers, while the aircraft itself remained hidden. More than a year passed without a confirmed breakthrough. The world watched as search teams continued exploring the southern Indian Ocean, scanning thousands of square kilometers of seabed using autonomous underwater vehicles, sophisticated sonar systems, and remotely operated equipment. Each mission carried the hope that the next sweep would finally uncover the aircraft. Instead, the ocean guarded its secret. Then, in July 2015, an unexpected discovery changed the investigation once again. On the remote shores of Réunion Island, more than 4,000 kilometers from the primary search area, a beach cleanup team found a large aircraft component partially covered by sand and marine life. It was a flaperon, a movable section of a wing used to help control an aircraft during flight. At first, nobody knew where it had come from. Investigators transported the component to France, where aviation specialists spent weeks examining serial numbers, manufacturing records, internal structures, and maintenance markings. Their conclusion stunned the world. The wing fragment came from the missing Boeing 777, operating as Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. For the first time, there was undeniable physical evidence that the aircraft had entered the Indian Ocean. In the years that followed, additional pieces believed or confirmed to belong to the aircraft were discovered along coastlines in Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and islands scattered across the western Indian Ocean. Oceanographers reconstructed powerful currents using advanced computer simulations. Their findings showed that debris could drift for months or even years before reaching distant beaches. The recovered fragments helped narrow investigators' understanding of the aircraft's likely final region, but they still couldn't answer the question that mattered most. What happened inside the aircraft? Without recovering the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, investigators could not reconstruct the aircraft's final moments with certainty. That absence created one of the greatest information gaps in modern aviation history. As official investigators continued their work, countless theories spread across television, newspapers, documentaries, online forums, and social media. Some suggested a catastrophic mechanical malfunction. Others proposed a gradual loss of cabin pressure that left the aircraft flying on autopilot until fuel exhaustion. There were also theories involving deliberate human actions. And then there were far more extraordinary claims that captured public attention despite lacking credible supporting evidence. Professional accident investigators approached every possibility differently. In aviation, a theory is not accepted because it is popular. It must be supported by verifiable facts, physical evidence, technical analysis, and scientific testing. Even after years of investigation, no publicly available evidence has conclusively established exactly why Flight 370 departed from its planned course, or what ultimately occurred during its final hours. That uncertainty is what continues to fascinate experts across the world. Every confirmed discovery has answered one question, while creating several new ones. If you're enjoying this investigation, please subscribe to Aviation Mystery and become part of a community that values evidence, careful research, and compelling aviation storytelling. Your support allows us to continue exploring the world's greatest aviation mysteries. More than 10 years later, one question still echoes across the aviation community. Could the aircraft still be waiting to be found? Or has the ocean hidden the final answer forever? More than a decade has passed. Governments have changed. Technology has advanced. Search equipment has become more sophisticated than ever before. Yet one question continues to haunt investigators, aviation experts, and the families of those on board. Where is Malaysia Airlines Flight 370? Few events in aviation history have generated such an extraordinary international response. Thousands of specialists dedicated years to analyzing radar records, satellite data, ocean currents, aircraft performance, and every recovered fragment connected to the missing Boeing 777. Despite those efforts, the aircraft's main wreckage has never been conclusively located. That reality is difficult to comprehend. In a world where smartphones can be tracked within meters, where satellites observe vast portions of the Earth every day, and where modern aircraft are equipped with multiple communication systems, Flight 370 remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 21st century. Its disappearance reshaped aviation. International organizations introduced new recommendations for aircraft tracking. Airlines strengthened monitoring procedures, and regulators began pushing for technologies that could make it far more difficult for a commercial aircraft to disappear without leaving a reliable trail. Even so, one crucial piece of the puzzle is still missing. Until the flight recorders and the main wreckage are recovered, investigators may never be able to reconstruct the aircraft's final moments with complete certainty. For the families of the 239 passengers and crew, this has never been simply a mystery discussed in documentaries or headlines. It is an unanswered chapter that has lasted for years, a search for truth, for understanding, and for closure. Perhaps one day, advances in deep ocean exploration, or a future expedition will finally uncover what has remained hidden for so long. Or perhaps, Flight 370 will continue to stand as a reminder that, despite humanity's remarkable technological achievements, there are still mysteries that challenge even our greatest capabilities. Whatever the final answer may be, one thing is certain. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 changed aviation forever. Now we'd like to hear from you. What do you believe is the most convincing explanation based on the available evidence? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. We read as many of your comments as possible, and your perspective could inspire a future investigation. If you found this documentary informative, don't forget to subscribe to Aviation Mystery, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with anyone fascinated by the world's greatest aviation mysteries. And make sure you turn on the notification bell, because our next investigation is even more mysterious, even more shocking, and explores another real aviation case that continues to leave experts searching for answers. Thank you for watching. Until our next documentary, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop looking beyond the horizon.